At RAF Air Base in Scotland, preparations are underway to receive a transatlantic flight that has been taken over midair. Soldiers are taking their position with their weapon. Colonel Drummond arrives on site to handle the crisis. Sergeant Karen quickly fills him in about the situation. The assumption is that both the pilot and co-pilot are no longer alive.
There's at least one passenger on board. He's on the German terrorist watch list.
Inside the control room, one officer guides the incoming aircraft over the radio, while another monitors its descent.
Leave the autopilot on, and I'll give you step-by-step instructions.
The landing is rough, but the plane makes it down safely. Drummond immediately asks for a visual on the aircraft. As they attempt communication, movement is spotted by one of the doors. Suddenly, a parachute drops, and a young boy begins climbing down from the aircraft. 2 RAF vehicles dispatched by Drummond quickly move in to retrieve him. Attention then shifts to the cockpit, where a new figure is now visible. Drummond issues a warning via radio. Any sudden moves will be met with force.
Do not move. We will open fire at the first movement.
The man is told to sit in the pilot's seat and show his hands. Claiming he's innocent and not a terrorist, the man pleads to be let off the plane so he can explain what's happened.
No, you'll do what I tell you to.
You have to believe me, I'm no terrorist.
Later, Drummond sends a translator to speak with the boy, Elias, who is now being checked by a medical officer. But Elias, deeply shaken, is unable to speak.
Warst du mit deinen Eltern unterwegs?
The day before the incident, in a hotel bathroom, a woman named Nadia, Elias's mother, is getting ready. She is sick and they're heading to New York for treatment. Elias takes care of their luggage while she speaks with her doctor by phone while.
Have a good flight. I'll see you at the airport.
Okay, bye.
That evening, Nadia meets Elias at the airport. They run to hug other and they go through security. Before boarding, Nadia steps into the restroom. There she prepares a syringe with her medication and takes a drink from a bottle, clearly affected by it. She then injects herself. Meanwhile, in the waiting area, Elias strikes up a conversation with a man named Farid. They get along well, and Farid asks about Elias's mother. Nadia soon returns and takes Elias away. The head flight attendant steps into the cockpit to offer the pilots coffee. She later goes to the galley to prepare it, and asks a colleague named Robert to handle a disruptive passenger in first class.
Hey, Robert, dein Typ wird verlangt auf der 1A.
The aircraft eventually departs from Germany, beginning its journey to the United States. Nadia returns to her seat after a visit to the bathroom, clearly unwell. As she settles in, she opens her notebook and comes across an old photograph of herself and her husband. The image sparks a memory. During a night drive, they are stranded in a remote area along with their infant child. Her husband eventually left to search for help, leaving her behind with the baby.
Ihr wartet im Auto. Ich gehe Hilfe holen.
Back in the present, Nadia becomes aware of a disturbance toward the front of the cabin. An aggressive passenger is causing trouble, and Robert tries to calm him. Things escalate quickly when one of the air marshals intervenes to handle the situation. Soon after, the second marshal steps in to assist.
Calm down, please, sir. Calm down.
As the marshals confront the man, Robert unexpectedly pulls out a knife and fatally attacks the second marshal. Meanwhile, the passenger overpowers the first one. Robert demands to know the location of a third air marshal. Once he gets the answer, he sends an accomplice, Curtis, to eliminate her. Curtis follows through and kills her. Robert then murders the final air marshal. Nadia picks up on the tension. Moments later, Robert, known as 8-Ball by his accomplices, strides into the cabin, armed and in control. He instructs the passengers to stay put and throws a gun onto the floor for dramatic effect. His co-conspirators appear, helping to herd the passengers to the back of the plane.
Move it! Faster! Come on!
The hijackers continue tightening their control over the aircraft. One of them is thrown through a hatch into the cargo hold, while another man, Berg, addresses the passengers. He announces that the plane has been taken over and orders everyone to place their hands on the seatbacks in front of them.
Would everyone please place their hand on the seat in front of them so we can see them?
Elsewhere, a man named Yuri discovers the flight's black box and begins reprogramming it. Once he finishes, he reports the update to Berg in the cockpit. The co-pilot then changes the plane's course. As the situation intensifies, Curtis forces Farid to move toward the front of the cabin. Meanwhile, Carl tries to keep 8-Ball composed, while Elias quietly slips out of his seat. Nadia notices and follows after him, but 8-Ball notices and goes after both of them. Nadia stops with her hands raised, but 8-Ball shoots Nadia in front of her son. He then seizes Elias, but Carl intervenes, returning the boy to his seat and instructing him to stay put.
Listen. I need you to stay here.
Curtis meets Berg midway through the cabin and updates him on what just happened. Furious, Berg confronts 8-Ball, warning him that he'll face consequences if he steps out of line again.
If you up again, I'm gonna kill you myself.
In a flashback, Nadia is sitting in a stranded vehicle with her baby, waiting for her husband to return with help. When enough time passes with no sign of him, she ventures into the forest to search for him. Her path leads her to an abandoned house. Inside, she spots blood on the floor, which trails toward the basement. As she investigates, a terrifying creature suddenly appears and chases her. Nadia manages to lock herself in the basement, where she finds her husband's lifeless body. The monster tries to force its way through a window, and during her desperate fight, it bites her but is ultimately destroyed by exposure to sunlight. Back in the present, Nadia wakes up mid-flight. Despite her injuries, she's still alive. She hears barking below and descends into the plane's cargo hold. At the same time, Berg is coercing Farid and 2 others into recording a message meant to sound like a terrorist threat.
We have abandoned this life to strike terror in your hearts.
Hidden beneath a car in the hold, Nadia lies still while Curtis and Yuri enter, searching for supplies to assemble a bomb. Yuri sets to work while Nadia moves toward one of the caged dogs. She kills and feeds on it, triggering enough noise to bring Yuri back. As he investigates, Nadia ambushes and kills him. Meanwhile, Farid returns to the passenger cabin and quietly rejoins Elias, sitting beside him without drawing attention. Nadia is now undergoing a rapid transformation. Fangs begin to emerge and she reaches for her medication. Before injecting herself, she hears Berg radio Yuri, mentioning they have 10 minutes until the next phase of their plan.
Yuri, come in. Do you read me?
10 minutes to jump. What's the status of it?
In response, she returns to Yuri's body, drinks his blood to accelerate her mutation, and heads back toward the front of the plane. The hijackers attempt to maintain control by spreading fear. 8-Ball warns the passengers that a deadly gas will be released if anyone leaves their seat. The hijackers head to the cargo hold and find Yuri's body lying beside a dog.
What the hell happened to you?
Meanwhile, Nadia makes her way back into the cabin, searching for Elias. Her sudden appearance unsettles the passengers, who are terrified she might trigger the supposed gas. She manages to calm Elias and leads him toward the cockpit, only to find that the pilots have abandoned their positions. With no one flying the plane, she returns to the cabin and asks if anyone on board knows how to operate an aircraft. A passenger volunteers and follows her to the cockpit. As they enter, Nadia shuts the door and locks it, preventing Farid, who tries to follow, from getting in. Elsewhere on the plane, the remaining hijackers are preparing to exit. Dressed in scuba gear, they get ready to jump into the ocean, and Berg makes contact with a boat that's meant to retrieve them after their escape.
T-minus 10 minutes to drop zone and waiting go. Got it.
Back in the cockpit, Nadia's transformation is accelerating. Her appearance begins to change, alarming Elias. The man beside her soon realizes that the plane is flying on autopilot. Nadia spots the hijackers on the surveillance screens and instructs him to hold off on switching off autopilot until they've completed their jump. However, the situation grows more urgent. 8-Ball has realized Nadia is still alive and returns to the aircraft with Berg. They make their way through the cabin, demanding to know where she is. A passenger points them toward the cockpit. At that moment, Nadia tells the man beside her to redirect the plane back toward the United States. He hesitates, pointing out that they're now closer to Europe, but she insists on the change of course. The man in the cockpit is clearly afraid of Nadia, so he agrees to change the plane's direction as she asked. When the hijackers notice the aircraft veering off course, Berg reacts violently. To send a message, he shoots a passenger in front of everyone and warns Nadia that more people will die unless she opens the cockpit door.
No passengers on this plane. We can play this game all night long.
He tells 8-Ball to bring another hostage. 8-Ball, showing no emotion, drags a young girl to the front. Berg holds the child up where Nadia can see her and begins counting down, threatening to shoot. Before he can pull the trigger, Nadia bursts out of the cockpit, launching herself at him and sinking her teeth into his neck. The sudden attack horrifies Bastian and the rest of the passengers. While Nadia is distracted with Berg, the man in the cockpit quickly locks the door again, keeping Elias safely inside. Nadia drains the blood from Berg's body, then immediately heads for the rest of the hijackers, who flee toward the cargo hold. Moments later, Berg begins to undergo a disturbing transformation. Nadia hears the changes and rushes back to end him, before he turns into something worse. 8-Ball witnesses the whole scene in stunned silence. Returning to the door, Nadia tells Elias not to open it under any circumstances. She retreats into the lavatory, where she checks her reflection. Meanwhile, 8-Ball becomes increasingly suspicious. He searches Nadia's belongings and finds her notebook, which he reads aloud to the other hijackers. He tells them that Nadia is a vampire. Carl, however, remains skeptical since he didn't witness what happened with Berg. He's more concerned about 8-Ball's growing instability, especially when 8-Ball reveals a UV light. Nadia injects herself with her medication. She slips into another memory. In this flashback, she's struggling to care for baby Elias while also managing her own hunger. At one point, overwhelmed and afraid of hurting him, she bares her fangs at the crying infant, then rushes to the bathroom and rips them out herself to protect him. Later, Nadia returns to the isolated house where she was originally bitten. There, she meets the father of the vampire who turned her. He speaks calmly, but warns her that neither he nor his son could control the curse. He shoots her. Back on the plane, 8-Ball is sharpening a wooden stake, while the remaining hijackers argue about their next move. Meanwhile, Elias disobeys the warnings and leaves the cockpit. He finds Nadia passed out in the bathroom and pulls her back to safety. When the hijackers are spotted approaching, the man inside the cockpit quickly locks the door again. Nadia regains consciousness and heads toward 8-Ball, who is waiting for her with the UV light and the stake. He burns her with the light, forcing her to collapse. He orders the others to retake control of the situation, while he stays behind to investigate what she truly is. 8-Ball draws her blood into a syringe. Just as he prepares to kill her, Elias appears holding a gun. 8-Ball moves toward the boy, trying to call his bluff. As he reaches out, the gun fires, shattering a window. The sudden change in cabin pressure throws the plane into chaos. Bastian informs the remaining hijackers that the cabin is running out of oxygen. They have roughly 10 minutes before people start passing out, and they need to lower the plane fast. As the pressure drops, Nadia acts quickly. She helps Elias into an oxygen mask. At the same time, the man locked inside the cockpit collapses from lack of oxygen, unable to both secure the door and reach a mask. That gives the hijackers just enough time to force their way back in.
It's open! Come on.
Nadia carries Elias toward the cabin and hands him over to Farid. Suddenly, the plane dips sharply in altitude, triggering panic. Nadia, undeterred, chases after 8-Ball, and finds him hiding inside an armored vehicle in the cargo hold. She fires at him repeatedly, but the bulletproof glass holds firm. Inside the car, 8-Ball takes the syringe filled with Nadja's blood and injects himself, ignoring her desperate pleas to stop. As his transformation begins, Nadja realizes what she has to do. She locates some alcohol and matches, then returns to the car and pours the fuel inside. Lighting a match, she sets him ablaze. While flames consume the vehicle, Nadja is reminded of the words spoken long ago by the elder vampire that their kind must never allow the curse to spread. Nadja kills the old man. Just before the final strike, he looks at her and says she'll never be able to control the darkness inside her. She then burned the cabin. Meanwhile, the aircraft regains stability. However, the hijackers notice smoke billowing from the lower level and rush to investigate. Before they reach the hold, Nadja has already extinguished the fire and is dragging herself back into the plane. Gunfire erupts. The hijackers open fire on her, causing chaos among the passengers. Panic sweeps through the cabin, and people begin stampeding toward the front of the plane. Farid carries Elias with him through the crowd. Back in the hold, the hijackers come across the charred armored vehicle. To their horror, 8-Ball is still alive. He lashes out and attacks Curtiz, draining his blood in a frenzy, before stepping out and heading after the others. Nadia secures the hatch to the hold to block him off, but she hears Elias screaming her name. Amid the chaos, Farid tries to calm things down, but not everyone agrees. One of the passengers shoots her. In response, Nadia lashes out and attacks another man. The crowd tries to restrain her, but she breaks free and charges at Farid. Elias steps in, pleading with her not to hurt him. His voice reaches her just in time, and she stops. Another man has a gun aimed at her, adding to the tension. Suddenly, Nadia hears disturbing sounds from the cargo hold. The other vampires are stirring. Realizing the danger, she rushes to block them off before they can reach the cabin again. She tries to secure a heavy door to trap 8-Ball inside. Farid follows to help, but in the struggle, 8-Ball bites him. As the creature forces his way through, the man with the gun arrives just in time and shoots 8-Ball, pushing him back. Knowing the infection is spreading through Farid's arm, she severs his hand to stop the curse from overtaking him. At the same time, Curtis, now fully turned, attempts to climb back into the plane from underneath. Nadia manages to force both vampires, Curtis and 8-Ball, back down into the hold. In doing so, she saves the head stewardess, who had nearly become one of their victims. Nadia returns to the cabin. She finds Bastian among the passengers. Farid, wounded but alive, reassures everyone that she's not the enemy. She saved them. Nadia helps Bastian back to the cockpit, where he explains that fuel is running dangerously low. They need to find the closest airport and land soon. Farid and Elias speak to Nadia calmly, urging her to rest somewhere dark and safe, away from the sunlight. Reluctantly, she agrees and moves to a shadowed space beneath the cockpit.
Mama, wir sind so weit gekommen.
As the plane approaches land, the pilot manages to get a signal from a nearby RAF airbase. He immediately reports that the flight had been hijacked.
This airplane is now under our control. We have 5 more soldiers.
While this is happening, Elias searches for his mother's medicine. An injured man is getting treatment. Below them, chaos erupts. The vampires are thrashing violently in the hold, their rage echoing through the plane. The injured passenger, believing he has no hope left, makes a desperate decision. He descends into the hold and unlocks the door, hoping to be turned rather than die slowly. But 8-Ball doesn't even acknowledge him. Instead, the vampire storms into the cabin and begins attacking the others. Nadia and Farid quickly realize the situation has spiraled out of control. The passengers, terrified and in pain, rush toward the cockpit, begging to be let in. Bastian refuses to open the door, understanding what's at stake. Nadia also sees the danger. Landing the plane now would release the vampires into the world. Farid suggests an alternative: land the plane and destroy it remotely. They head to the fuel tanks to prepare an explosive setup. They have a detonator, but no timer to delay the blast. Nadia volunteers to stay behind and trigger it manually once everyone else has escaped. She explains this to Elias, who is heartbroken. He refuses to abandon her.
Du kannst dich hier verstecken.
Ich habe keine andere Wahl.
Instead, Elias sneaks off and heads into the hold to find the hijackers' timer, taking a UV light to protect himself. As he navigates through the darkness, the vampires chase him, but he avoids them with quick thinking. He finds the timer and tries to return to the cockpit, but is ambushed and drops the light. From the cockpit, Nadia sees what's happening. She asks Bastian if the autopilot is engaged. He confirms that air traffic control can guide the plane from this point. Nadia turns to Farid, makes him promise to protect Elias, and then does something irreversible. She feeds on Bastian, fully embracing the vampire within her to gain the strength she needs. Down in the hold, Elias is overwhelmed. The vampires corner him, and 8-Ball approaches, claiming the boy as his next victim. Just in time, Nadia arrives and launches herself at 8-Ball. The two vampires engage in a brutal fight. He bites her, weakening her, but Elias comes up with a plan. He opens the hold's door mid-air, creating a vacuum that Nadia uses to push 8-Ball out of the plane. But it's not over. 8-Ball claws his way back inside, still alive. Farid sees this and makes a bold move. He disengages the autopilot and tilts the plane sharply, exposing 8-Ball to direct sunlight. He burns and finally dies. In the aftermath, Elias gives his weakened mother some of his own blood to revive her. She wakes up, feral and barely in control. Struggling to hold back her hunger, she pushes him away and crawls back into the hold. Back at the RAF airbase, Elias pleads with the translator to help Farid. Desperate and emotional, he insists that Farid isn't like the others, that he's not one of the bad guys.
Nein, ihr müsst Farid da rausholen. Ihr müsst ihn retten vor den Vampiren.
Instead of listening, they sedate him. Control is handed back to Colonel Drummond, who decides to wait it out. Meanwhile, Farid is still trapped, trying to explain to the military outside what's happening. But no one believes him. They assume he's resisting arrest, and ignoring his warnings, shoot him before storming the aircraft. Farid survives, but they drag him out before he can complete his plan to destroy the plane and everyone inside it. As Elias is being transported away in an ambulance, he wakes up just enough to slip the sedative into the paramedic's arm, the same one meant for him. Once the medic is unconscious, Elias grabs his teddy bear and escapes, sprinting back toward the airstrip. Inside the aircraft, the soldiers are quickly overwhelmed. The vampires tear through them, and Farid's warnings go unheeded in the chaos. Through the back of a truck, he catches a glimpse of Elias approaching, but his voice doesn't reach the boy in time. Elias arrives at the plane and sees what's become of his mother. She's feeding on a soldier, consumed by the hunger. He calls out to her, but she is no longer the person he knows. Realizing what he must do, Elias detonates the explosives, setting off a massive blast that engulfs the plane in flames. The explosion stuns Drummond and the others, who were completely unprepared for what the boy just did. In the aftermath, through the haze and smoke, Farid manages to crawl toward the wreckage. He finds Elias. Without saying a word, the two embrace. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.